So similar to was it last week's episode? I'm so confused with all of these episodes that we've done. But we talked about having power outages. Like you had a power
Yes.
outage and then you went to CES. And while you were at CES, I had a power outage that lasted for nearly 2 days of my house. I'm part of the LA fires. I'm not really. I'm
Well,
far
but
enough
you
away
still
from
have a
those.
house, thankfully.
But I've still got a house and we just lost power. We didn't get evacuated yet, as far as I'm aware. But we did have a whole bunch of power outages that required me to live off grid for a few days.
Hmm.
And the schools lost power, but they still held schools. I learned a couple lessons. I'll go through that really quick, but I really want to get to your CES thing. So I'll jump through my spiel as fast as I can. I'm Phil Royle, been doing content and stuff for 20 years. I tried to sell you a t-shirt at thewhatcar.com/store where you can get a t-shirt. Ed on our YouTube channel, you could see I've got an adapter for that shirt on, which you can buy at thewhatcar.com/store. We've got other ones, EVAF, EV displacement replacement. We've got What Car ones. We've got water bottles. We got a variety of things. It helps support the podcast and the blog. And I'm thankful.
Uh, Ed Sanchez, likewise, 20 plus years in automotive content creation moderation. Day job, automotive electronics industry analyst. Uh, and the Watt Car co-founder and contributor. And CES 2025 attendee
And Survivor.
and
Well,
survivor.
have you gotten over the sickness yet? I mean, you still have time to die.
Well, continuing the annual tradition, I did come back with a bit of a bug from the show, but I'm still alive for now. So,
So we'll jump real quick into the things I learned during this power outage. One is when you go for 2 days, which is only 2 days, but we didn't know how long it was going to be.
mhm.
I had to once again, because I run a generator for this, I had to drive out of my city to go and get gas because the gas stations didn't have power here. So
How big of a like a
it was a weird
area?
hodgepodge. It was a weird hodgepodge.
Mm.
So it was the majority of my city, but
Hmm.
then the city next to me, half of that one had power. Luckily, it was the half nearest my city, so I just had to drive to the to the edge of the
Mm.
next city. I could have driven to the city north of me about 15 minutes, and I would
Hmm.
have had power there. But
Hmm.
that was a similar thing. Part of that city had no power. Is all planned power
Hmm.
outages so the fires
Hmm.
don't
Yep,
accidentally.
yep.
Anyway, so what do you do with a gas car when there's no electricity? Well, you don't get gas because the gas stations don't have power. So when I went to go and get gas for the generator, uh, I had a similar problem. One of my friends with an Ionic 5, she had to go and drive. She went and drove to a city a few miles away, further than I had to go to a did she go to a supercharger? I don't remember. She went to a fast charger to fill up her
Yeah.
Ionic 5. And so there was a lot of that shuffling going
Hmm.
on there.
Hmm.
But I learned that I've got a generator and I've got a relative who is in assisted living. And
Hmm.
that house in the same neighborhood as me has solar, has battery power, battery
Hmm.
backup. They made it about a day and a half and then they lost power.
Not
So,
bad.
and I don't know what size power pack it is, whatever, but
Hmm.
it's assisted living. So you've got things that you cannot turn off necessarily.
Yeah.
Like they want it a little bit warm. You got to have lights on during the day or else you're going to have trip and fall. You
Or
got to
like
be able to
CPAPs or
cook.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got all these things that have got to run. They made it about a day and a half on the battery power
Hmm.
before before the lights turned off and they had
Hmm.
to go to an alternative way. But that was with solar running, getting the batteries going
Hmm.
and trying to charge them. They were just using up too much juice. An interesting thing is my kids' middle school has a Tesla Powerwall. They've got
Hmm.
like 8 cabinets that go along. And I was like, oh, they're going to have power for days. They had no power. They
Hmm.
had an agreement with the city
Hmm.
where they got this power wall. I heard for free. They got
Hmm.
these 8 cabinets. I don't know how much power, but when I worked it out, it should be a lot. And the agreement with the city was that they would get it installed and everything and at like no cost. Presumably the school is paying to juice them up, but because I don't think they've got solar. But then when there's power outages, they've got to support the neighborhood, a few houses around them,
Hmm.
which meant it's great for if the power fluctuates for 10 minutes.
Hmm.
It meant when the power went out for an extended period of time, the school had no power. Completely
Hmm.
useless. So don't sign any deals with your power if you do a power backup where you will
Yeah.
help anybody else because 8 cabinets of these things, of these Tesla Powerwall things stacked up in
Hmm.
the back of the school, and they didn't have power for 2 days. They were doing
And
school with just open windows and open doors while the wind's gusting through and, trying to get light. It was,
yeah, that's kind of weird. Yeah.
yeah. And so it kind of, I began to wonder, like, we also had, probably 50 some mile an hour winds. So
Hmm.
temporary solar would not be a solution in something like this. If I had like a small battery pack like you've got, you just simply
Hmm.
couldn't put it outside. It'd blow away. I have a tiki
Yeah.
bar in my front yard where we, have a party and you
Hmm.
got this tiki bar and it's all made of wood and everything.
Blew it
That
over.
thing, yeah, that thing took off and landed like that. It's serious wind. So you need
Is it salvageable, or are you gonna have to build a new one?
I've got to do some. It's salvageable, but it's way rickety now. I need to
Yeah.
put some beams in to triangulate stuff at this point. But I would need solar positively attached to withstand gusts up to 50 miles an hour wind.
Yeah.
So it's like it's serious stuff.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as you might think doing power. And even my friends that had power with the Ionic 5,
Hmm.
they began like having to cut down. They didn't want to run the heat. They were looking at their percentage of battery power that they had left. They have like a Generac, I think,
Okay.
power system. And they were, after you get like a day or
Just the
so in, and
battery
you're
pack,
like,
not the gas generator.
no, they've got the battery pack with solar.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they were after like a day or so, they're like, well, we're not going to run the heat. We're not going to like. They're looking at the
Yeah.
thing, going,
Yeah.
we're down low
So
enough. We don't know how long this is going to
yeah,
last.
it's kind of funny you say that because a friend of mine bought, I think it was from the way she described it, I think it was the Anchor F3800,
Hmm.
which is one of their bigger ones.
Yeah, it's 3,800 kilowatt hours and then
Kilowatt hours.
stackable up to something like
Yeah, it's modular. You can like
15, no,
stack a
30.
whole,
It's huge. It's huge. You can combine them
you can
into,
add a whole bunch of them
yeah.
together, but she got it at some Home Depot special. Um, but I don't think she really realized how much power her home uses. And also she's got a Tesla Model Y, which, if you know, is about a 82 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I don't know how she was using it, or if she was trying to charge her car during an outage or something, but she ended up returning it because she said, "Oh, this thing's useless. You know, it doesn't hardly does anything." And I was like, how are you using it?" And she never really gave me a straight answer, so I was like, "Oh, okay, well."
I more than likely
But
she was using it the way I use my generator because my generator's got more than enough juice.
uh-huh.
You just turn everything on. And if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think that these batteries are going to do that, they're not. You
No.
need massive, massive batteries
No,
to live
yeah.
life like you don't care.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I would say to, live life like you don't care, you're looking at like 60 kilowatt hours plus standby battery
and then
where you could
solar
just,
on top of that, trying
yeah,
tons of solar
yeah,
to try to recoup the
yeah, to
the
party like
power.
it's 1999.
Yes. So I learned quite a bit from this, and the setup that I was talking about before, where I was like, oh, for 15,000, I think I would, um, be able
Hmm.
to do something like the 3,800, or like there was at CES. I don't know if you're going to talk
Hmm.
about it, but Blue Eddy had what they call a 6K, the Energy Pro 6K, which I assume is
Hmm.
a 6,000 kilowatt hour battery. Even there, with these big things, you
Hmm.
can't go indefinitely. And I realized
Yeah.
that my setup needs to be, I have like, I don't know, 7 to 10 kilowatt hours of battery. I
Hmm.
have solar regenerating at, whatever the number is. I don't
Hmm.
know, big number.
Hmm.
And then I have a gas generator that I can then charge the battery with as
Hmm.
soon as the sun goes down, because at this time of year, the sun's down at 5. You're probably
Hmm.
not getting any
Hmm.
useful solar from like 3:30 or
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
on. Then I've got to crank the generator up, run the generator through to 10 o'clock to try to get through the night with the power. And then maybe even run the generator in the morning a little bit while the battery's
Yeah.
recouping
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the nighttime. It's
Yeah.
a very interesting hybrid setup that you end up on. And this is only that's looking at it trying to be sustainable
Hmm.
for many days. See how
Hmm.
how long you can get it sustainable
Yeah.
for.
I mean, honestly, I mean, notwithstanding everything that's happened and in Palisades in Southern California, which is just apocalyptic. But this is generally like more of a seasonal thing. I'd say on the East Coast, like Florida, the Gulf states, where they just okay, hurricane season. They kind of a lot of people have just kind of gotten used to it and are kind of ready for it as much as you can be. But I think in some ways, fires are not in some ways. I'd say fires are much less predictable than weather. So yeah, it's kind of harder to kind of game plan everything. But anyway, we have a ton of CES
Yeah, let's
news.
move on to CES
Most of it
stuff.
automotive, some battery packs. Hopefully we can get to it. If not, we'll save it for the next episode. Anyway, jumping right in.
Jumping
So
right in, we say 10 minutes in.
okay. So Zeekr, a subsidiary of Geely, also the parent company of Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus now. They had two models there, some of which I'd read about online. This was the first time I'd seen them both in person. The mix, I don't know if you call it a minivan, MPV, whatever you want to call it.
I'd call it cute.
Well, I don't know if I exactly call
cute?
it cute.
Was it cute in person?
How would I describe
No, is
it?
what I'm getting.
It's it's cute, but not in like a cloying, like Hello Kitty way. It's cute in like a kind of a clever, nerdy way. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, maybe that's why I thought it was cute.
Oh, um, anyway, so this is honestly, I mean, I kind of like the ID Buzz until they announced the price on it, and I was like, oh, it's not that cool. This to me, I think this is conceptually cooler than the ID Buzz. Basically, it's kind of a luxury minivan, which sounds like an oxymoron to Americans, but in China, this is a real thing. Like luxury minivans are a thing there, and they don't think it's weird at all because, as we've discussed before, a lot of the premium vehicles in China are chauffeur driven. So there's a lot more emphasis on the rear seat luxury than necessarily oohing and eyeing the driver and front passenger with stuff. But anyway, the mix. So the mix is it's kind of looks somewhat similar to the ID Buzz, but it has articulating seats where the front seats will flip around and face the rear seats to create kind of like a lounge environment.
Which is nothing new. We've seen that on other
Yeah,
concepts. That's like the concept thing to do.
except this is in production though.
Oh,
This
is it
isn't a
really?
concept. This is a production model
Oh,
In China. I mean, granted, it's not, they're not exporting it everywhere yet, but it's a production model. The other interesting thing about it, and I actually asked one of the representatives about it, and they kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, but they claimed it wasn't an issue. Is it has a B pillarless design. So basically, the middle and front doors are both slide out. So it creates this huge like central opening. So when those are open and the seats face each other, it's kind of like this basically lounge environment.
I guess that makes it easier to get in and out. I can't think of a situation where you'd want to have all the doors open and
Mhm.
the things flipped around. Like, I don't know.
I know if you just wanted
Maybe
to
if
hang
you,
out like a
yeah,
beach party and
a
like,
beach party.
have some Mai
Yes.
Tais and like, hey man, cool. You know,
I guess that's the scenario.
that's a scenario. The pricing in China now, granted, this would change, especially under a Trump administration, I'm sure. It's $40,000 in China, so immediately double that if it was exported anywhere. So then that's about on par with the ID Buzz. But everything looked very well executed. There were no like big hiccups in the demos or anything. Fit and finish looked nice. So
So
that was that.
they brought that. They brought the 001 FR.
Yeah, so that's the shooting brake wagon model. I think we both said we think is pretty cool.
Is it taller than you'd think it would be? Is it more like a crossover size
The
than
the
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 001?
001.
Yeah.
Um,
Or is it a car or is it a crossover? Is my question.
it struck me as more of a car.
Okay.
Um,
Because in pictures, I think it looks like a car, but pictures are always
no,
like
but I
you just
mean,
don't know until you
you
get
know,
there.
it's an EV, so it's, with the battery pack, it's, lifted a little bit, but it doesn't, the dimensions don't strike me as a SUV or crossover.
Is it kind of
To
like
me,
the
it's a car.
Polestar, Polestar 2 that it's a little
Uh,
taller than you'd think? It's more like a like cross trek kind of thing or cross turismo or whatever, where
not
they're a
not
little bit 4x4 ish.
not really even. It's
Oh,
like it's just a chunky sedan. I mean, it is a shooting brake. It's a wagon. It's a five door basically,
well,
if
that
you want to
makes me
call it
like it
that.
even more because I was
Yeah.
expecting that, it'd be uh, as I've been trying to find reasons not to like it.
Hmm.
Uh,
No,
I've been thinking, well,
I
maybe it's too
really
big.
like it, and whatever you may think about China, the Chinese car companies, whatever, objectively, it's a very impressive vehicle. It's I don't even know the actual it's the power outputs, it's up there with the Plaid and the Sapphire. It's
Yeah,
I think 1,300 horsepower they're claiming, around 2 seconds, 0 to 60. I mean,
yeah.
it's that level of vehicle.
Did they say
I
why they were at CES? Why Zeekr, a Chinese brand,
I think just to kind of flex their muscle and say, "Hey, we're here, get used to it."
even though
And
they've said repeatedly that they're not coming to North America or they're not coming to the United States of America, they are coming to North America.
I think that was BYD that said that.
Oh, was
It
it?
seemed
Zeekr's
it
not
seemed
said
to me
anything.
that Zeekr's like, we want to be in North America.
Well,
Now,
obviously they do if they brought the car.
well, I mean, okay, so I don't want to go too down a rabbit hole with this, but just kind of put the pieces together about who Zeekr is a part of and how they could make that happen. So I think, whether it's in 2, 3, 5, or 7 years, I think we will see Zeekr in North America.
I think from
And
what
I
I've
wouldn't be
seen,
I wouldn't
I
be
would
mad
not hate
because
it.
I think
Yeah.
they're beautiful, by all indications, well engineered, sophisticated vehicles. And I think that'd be very popular. So
And if it's the next generation of what you think is
mhm,
already a pretty decent vehicle, uh,
yeah.
any software hiccups or anything that they might have now,
Hmm.
those should be all ironed out for the
Hmm.
next iteration. Of course,
Hmm.
you can guarantee by the next iteration, the 001 FR super wagon thing, they
Yeah.
won't bring that to America. It'll instead be some economy front wheel drive thing that we're just like, where's the last? Like kind of like what they did with I was gonna say with the Skyline. I mean, the Skyline that came here was still, um, the
Oh,
GTR or
the GTR,
whatever
yeah.
was still good. But it's like we all wanted the R34 Skyline. It's like
So okay,
Nissan
so
didn't bring
just
the one we wanted.
little gearhead trivia here, and I know we're an EV podcast. I'm going to go off script a little bit here. The US actually did get the Skyline for a little while, but not as the Skyline.
No, I got the 240 SX.
No, well, that was the Sylvia,
Hmm.
Infinity G35.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay,
Let's
so
see.
there was a Fila was there,
Again, okay, so the big news with the
and that's
Fila,
Sony's car, isn't it?
yeah, the
No,
Sony
yeah,
Honda Mobility, yeah.
yeah.
So the big news this year was the pricing, which,
God, they're milking this. Isn't this year three?
yeah, so this really has me wondering about what their plans are with this. So it's going to start at like the lower trim model about 90,000, and the higher trim model, I think it's like
103 about 1029.
103.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
For the
talking
signature trim.
a signature. So we're effectively looking at, Model S Lucid Air prices. Yeah, I would say dimensionally, size wise, it's about the same. Um,
Oh, really?
oh,
I imagine this thing to be smaller, but
no, it's a big car. It's good size.
hmm.
Uh, the initial launch market will be California only. Um, so they're kind of managing expectations right out of the box. Um, I I mean, there's the whole pillar to pillar screen,
Yoke steering wheel, you got to be
yoke
pumped for
steering wheel,
that.
steer by wire. I think they did confirm that. The top, the signature trim or whatever, I think is going to have the rear monitors. But I don't know. I'm just kind of wondering what the appeal of this car is going to be.
300 miles, 91 kilowatt hour battery,
Yeah,
all-wheel
I
drive.
think I 400 something horsepower.
Yeah, it's
So
two 241 horse motors, one up front, one in the back. Reserve one for $200. It looks very plain Jane, especially compared to some of the other things that are out there, and especially for that price. I
I
don't know
don't
what
know.
it brings to the table.
Now I did an analysis piece for my day job a couple of years ago. This was even before I think the whole Sony Honda tie-up was announced officially about what the play would be on this. And I- they may still kind of tie this together and really put together a knockout package. But Sony is an entertainment juggernaut. If you combined movies, TV, gaming, they they just have a huge library of content and titles and franchises they own. So that is compelling to some people, but I still don't think the context and use case for that has been fully realized, because I don't think that really makes sense until we're talking like level 3 plus autonomy, where it's hands off, eyes off autonomous driving, where
Well,
you
and
could be,
there's
yeah,
screens in this car that go edge to
yeah,
edge at the front, but they're not
yeah, pillar to
massive.
pillar.
They're not
No,
the kind that you would sit and watch a movie on.
no, they're not like the BMW cinema
Yeah,
display.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think separate from that context, I really don't see what makes this vehicle that compelling. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing something, but until they can hit that 3 plus eyes off, hands off bogey, I just don't know. I don't know where this is going. It's going to include 3 years of complimentary subscription. They gave no context or information what the renewal would be.
Is that like a
Uh,
gaming subscription to the PlayStation, or
that's
is
that's that
that?
no, that's like infotainment and like automated driving, like an autopilot
uh,
kind of whole package deal.
yeah.
So, but again, I don't. It was a little short on details, so it's like, okay, you're charging a lot of money for kind of like you said, kind of a generic looking car. I mean, Sony. I mean, maybe this shows you what era we're from, but back in the day, Sony was like, whoa, Sony's like, if you had Sony, TV,
Hmm.
sound system, whatever.
Oh, I had a Sony Trinitron when I was a kid, and I was a
Oh,
baller.
yeah, it's like, whoa, you got Sony,
It
man.
had stereo speakers on the sides. Like, it was
Yeah. Oh
amazing.
yeah, Sony was like baller brand. Now
Yeah.
Sony is kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for TVs now, I mean, that's just my perception. I consider it kind of a two-way race between LG and Samsung. And
Hmm.
they're both Korean brands.
Yeah.
In terms of sound systems, again, Harman Kardon
Hmm.
and all their brands, parent company, Samsung. Um, I just, I don't know if Sony has the same cachet they used to, with a lot of consumers. And I don't know. I don't know what the play is for this. So
You want to hear my theory?
sure.
This was for Honda to get somebody else to pay for Honda's development into the EV world. So Honda partnered with Sony. Sony looking to stay relevant, looking to be in automotive,
Hmm.
get into the automotive, the mobile space. All of that is the next generation, because you can't stay in just where they were. You got to constantly be moving. So
Hmm.
automotive, smart vehicles, autonomous, all this stuff.
Hmm.
We kind of already make something with the PlayStation that kind of power this
Hmm.
probably. So Sony then could pay Honda to develop Honda's EV. Honda gets somebody else to pay the bills. They get
Hmm.
to develop an EV. They get to create their chassis, their platform, while Sony pays the money, and they kind of
Hmm.
break into the behind the scenes, because I don't think Sony
Hmm.
necessarily wants a car, uh, but they may want to be all the electronics within the car. Kind of like what Apple was looking for. And this may even be built off of when maybe Sony was looking to get into it, because Apple was rumored to be getting into cars, and it was a hey, me too moment. So there's all of
Yeah.
that. Meanwhile, Honda now is talking with Nissan about merging, and the thing that Nissan
Hmm.
brings to the table is electric car technology and production and the ability to get vehicles on the road, whether you think that they're great or not, they're still
Hmm.
on the road. They have a
Hmm.
couple of them that they
Hmm.
sell and they actually work, and that's more
Hmm.
than Honda really has, at least in America.
Hmm.
So if the Honda Nissan thing goes through, I think Afeela is gone. I think this was a play that Honda did when they had nothing and nothing in the sights for EV future, and Nissan can become that. And so Sony was it was convenient. It was a
Yeah.
marriage of convenience,
Well, so let me, and again, I'm
all
probably
made
gonna,
up in my brain, all made up in my brain. That's so. Ed is now coughing his lungs out. At least you
yeah,
know where
sorry
the
about
mute
that.
button is.
Yeah. So again, I'm probably gonna tick some people off by making this analogy, but do you think the Afeela is somewhat gonna be like the Fisker Ocean, and that you see one out in the wild, you're like, oh, look, there's an Afeela, but it's gonna be like kind of one of those unicorn cars,
I don't think it'll
where
ever get that far.
you don't think it's even gonna make it to market.
No.
I I
If the
think
Nissan thing goes
all
through, I think Honda's moved on to other ventures at this
right.
point. I think all of this was an EV move to get Honda into the EV market and have
Which,
somebody else pay it.
speaking of which, let's segue directly into that. So this is another somewhat not quite as a slow drip as the Afeela, but this was shown last year, and then they showed the newest iteration this year, the Honda Zero models. So they showed,
Which I guess is that's got to be built off of like zero emissions, zero
yeah.
impact, and
So
yeah.
they showed the next generation. So I think last year they had what they called the saloon or sedan, basically, and kind of an MPV kind of minivan
Yep.
looking thing. So this year it was uh, an evolution of the saloon concept, and also more of a conventional, I don't know, I guess kind of almost like a Honda Pilot looking SUV
Yeah, the
thing.
SUV is very normal looking, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's like, oh, okay,
The car's still wild, but the SUV suddenly went from space age to yeah, that's like it's a
yeah,
crossover SUV.
it's like is what it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, Honda's claiming these are close to production intent. Um, the saloon or sedan basically looks almost the same as it did last year. So it's still, I'd say the front kind of looks like a Lamborghini Huracan, kind
I
of
was just
very,
gonna say that.
very
That
wedgy looking. Yeah.
from like kind of low down, it doesn't. It
Yeah.
looks like a Dirt Devil handy vac. But there'll be a link in the show notes to a CNET article, and there
Hmm.
they took a picture standing up a little bit. It's a
Hmm.
four-door Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Once you
So,
once you get past the where the nose stops, and
mhm.
it's crazy. It's worth a look.
Yeah. So I think they did confirm on that they're going to do steer by wire. At least what they showed at this year's show did have like a yoke wheel, which, like I said, with steer by wire works. It's fine. I think Tesla's stumble is they implemented a yoke with mechanical steering. So you had, YouTube videos of guys going hand over hand and, flailing around. Um, with steer by wire, yoke, kind of makes sense. But
What's this
anyway,
Asimo OS?
um, so I guess they're Honda's falling back on kind of the warm fuzzies of Asimo, their little animatronic, robot dude. And that's what they're calling the new OS for these models. Um, so I think it's their way of kind of trying to humanize technology a little bit, and trying to make AI, less like Terminator and more like, Asimo, I guess. I don't know.
They'll
Um,
kill you with politeness.
exactly. So and some of the buzzwords they're throwing out are a little cheesy, like they're calling it wise design instead of smart design. Human centered, blah blah blah, this and that. um but I think that the big like the three big terms they use for it. I think they said thin, light, and wise for these concepts. So, and that kind of fits with Honda's overall design ethos, historically. Um, like compared to rivals, I would say they're a little bit lighter weight. Some of the components are lighter weight but more precise, if that makes any sense. But still durable, but very like precisely engineered to accomplish their purpose.
So it's a
Um,
Honda, is what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, effectively, yeah. So rather than like brute force it or just do massively overbuilt, um, you know, components or systems, they just very precisely engineer things.
Yeah, they're very delicate with a lot of what Honda does. It's
Yeah.
very specific. Everything has a purpose, and it may be boring and brings you an Accord, but
Hmm.
the Accord does what it does really well,
Hmm.
and you know what you're getting when you get it. And so if you
Hmm.
put that into something like this, that sounds like a win.
Yeah. No, I think Honda's like design philosophy of being very purposeful, deliberate, precise, lightweight, and yet simple. I think from what at least the buzzwords are thrown out there, they're trying to apply that to this, and I think they can do that successfully. They'll be successful at it. But yeah. So anyway,
How big was the SUV? Which is
I
the
guess
same name as far as I can tell. It's like the Zero sedan and Zero
yeah,
SUV or something.
I'd say about pilot size,
Okay, so it's not huge, not small.
pilot or passport. I mean, in that size range. Um, yeah. So anyway, they I think they said 2026
Hmm.
SOP for this, I believe. So coming soon. Anyway,
Oh, cool. Yeah, I
yeah.
like
So
those.
yeah, so it's finally Japan's kind of getting in on the EV thing. It seems like. So just a few kind of anecdotal, observational notes through the show. Um, a lot of the tier ones and vendors I talked to, um, they said they're definitely feeling the developmental pressure from China, especially their Chinese clients. They just want to move really fast. So they like I'll give you an example. I talked to um, uh, one company that does like mapping and navigational software, and they said they went from signed contract to basically completed project for the client in 10 weeks,
Hmm.
which and they said typically that's like a 6 to 12 month, and that's even somewhat an expedited time frame with the conventional OEM, because I guess the levels of approvals and bureaucracy and validation and all that. They said sign contract to completed product 10 weeks, boom. So that just gives you kind of an idea of how quickly the Chinese automotive market is moving. So
I wonder if they want to be, I wonder if they're being very aggressive right now to prove that they're kind of indispensable. You can't tariff them out, you can't ban them. That if you want to move fast and make things uh, in
are you
this
talking
world,
about the Chinese OEMs or the
yeah, Chinese
supplier
just
companies?
Chinese companies in general, if they can come in and they can do stuff faster than anybody else in the world.
So the company I was talking about was not a Chinese company per
Oh,
se.
okay.
It was actually a US based company that was contracted to do a project by a Chinese OEM.
Oh,
So
okay.
they delivered from signed contract to completion in 10 weeks. And they said typically with non-Chinese OEMs, it's minimum 6 to 12 months.
So why are the Chinese moving so fast?
Because they're ambitious and they want to win, I guess.
Hmm,
I mean, despite all the headwinds, all the obstacles being
yeah.
thrown at them, tariffs.
So I guess it still works that way in reverse then at that point. It's just
Mhm.
the opposite of what I thought, but it's still the move fast and make things. You Chinese wants to they want to
Yeah, and
produce
I
things
think I
and they
think
don't
the
have time to wait.
challenge, yeah, and I think the challenge also to your point is for companies that want to do business with Chinese OEMs, they need to be prepared to deliver quicker. If they're used to, just as an example, just the Volkswagen Group or Toyota or whatever, and they have an expectation of 12 to 18 months, blah blah blah, whatever, you know, Chinese OEM says we want this in 2 months or 3 months,
Yeah.
and they're like, well,
Yeah.
you know,
It's encouraging that they're coming to non-Chinese manufacturers to make parts for them.
well, I mean, I
You'd
think,
think they just make a new factory in 10 weeks and then produce the thing that they
well, no,
wanted.
but I mean, in this case, the product I was talking about was a software product. It's not
Okay.
hardware.
Yeah.
So
Well, I could go in a
it's,
whole other direction with what they
yeah,
could
it's
be.
it's a somewhat of a, but anyway, I'm just using it as an anecdote to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Chinese auto industry is just moving incredibly fast, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of stunning everybody. But anyway, let's see what else. Moving on.
There was Aptera there. Did you see their thing? Because there was a whole craziness on, oh, the new Aptera, now it's Pininfarina designed or something like that. And I looked at the pictures and was like, it looks exactly the same. And then this is the Aptera, is the three-wheeled solar
Yeah,
car that's been forever 1 year
I
away
mean,
from production. And it is now once again still 1 year away from production, but supposedly was at
so in
CES.
all fairness, I did not see it in person, only because I had a pretty full appointment schedule for
Well, you're an important guy.
my day job. So yeah, I got important meetings. Yeah. Anyway, um, but I did read the reports, and so it's, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful about this, but if you're a Monty Python fan, you remember, um, I can't remember if it was Holy Grail or History of the World. Where like, I'm not dead yet.
Yes.
Um, I really do think they're really working toward trying to get a vehicle on the road. I personally still think the verdict is out with Aptera. I think they may, and again, it's going to depend on how they're received by the public. It's a very innovative vehicle on many levels, but it's just out there enough. It's hard to know if people will really go for it, or if they'll be just like, this is just too weird. Um, anyway,
Yeah. Well, they're
uh,
going to use LG batteries. That was their,
LG batteries. That was the other big like supplier related announcement.
yeah. Which who were they using before? Did they even know?
No, so this kind of, not to get too nerdy about this, but kind of getting into the whole supply chain issue. So they previously announced a deal with this Korean company called CTNS. So CTNS makes the packs, and LG makes the cells that will go into the packs. So I guess LG and CTNS are going to work together to provide the
It
packs.
just seems when you're like 10 years into making an electric car and now you announce who your battery supplier is. It's like
Yeah. Anyway, so
they are
I
grasping at
still
announcements.
I really hope they make it. I'm really curious about one. I want to see, and I want to eventually drive one.
I think this, if you what you were saying before, do you think this will be kind of like the Afila will be like the Fisker? I think the Aptera will be like the Fisker. I think they'll get
Yeah.
some on the roads and then it'll be too much. They can't get to production. And getting to production is expensive.
Hmm.
Production is
Hmm.
crazy expensive.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
what's going to kill them. That's
And
why they're still in
yeah,
business, is because they've never entered production. They've never entered the really expensive part of this whole
yeah,
process.
yeah.
They can barely get to where they're going. As soon as they get there, they're going to be the dog that catches the car, and the car's going to eat them.
Yeah. Now, anyway, I don't want to get too much into it, but they
No,
have this
we've
whole
got
kind of like modular factory concept. They say where they can have. Anyway,
sure.
I think it's a cool concept. I hope they make it. They do have their challenges. Anyway, moving on.
AC Future is a big motorhome. Did you
Yes,
see this thing?
yes, I did. So the one I saw was a $300,000 one, which,
Oh,
as
cheap.
crazy as that sounds, for
It's not
luxury
actually out
motorhomes,
there. Yeah, for a
no,
Class A. Was it like a huge Class A or was this like
it
a mini
was,
Class A?
it
Because the
was
winner was it Winnebago?
almost.
Who is it had the last one? Thor, whoever it was, had the Class
Mhm.
A that they had people drive around, and that one looked big. But then, as I realized, it was actually like a baby Class A that they were then gonna theoretically sell
This
for two
one
hundred
was
thousand.
pretty big. I wouldn't say it was like a full like coach size. It was probably, if I had to guess, it'd be like 36 foot. I don't know,
So
37.
still luxury size,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like
oh, for
teeny.
sure.
Yeah.
So they showed three variants of this pod, which is just like, I guess, kind of like an ADU idea, kind of.
Yeah, I want to circle back to that when you're
Um,
done.
Trailer, which still not cheap, but again, considering like Airstream, not entirely out there, 138,000,
Yeah, it's
and
reasonable.
298 for the RV version. So anyway, the kind of the this, this reminds me of the original Star Wars. Again, I'm dating myself as a Gen X. But wasn't Luke's uncle a water farmer on Tatooine or something?
I don't remember.
Anyway, so supposedly this has a water harvesting
Oh,
system.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, what
Yeah.
I know as a dehumidifier.
Well, yeah, no, and so I was actually talking to someone the other day, and he said, "Yeah, I heard about this. This is really cool technology that it harvests water from thin air." And he said, "So I'm like, you mean a dehumidifier?" So yeah, but it's like I'm like,
Yeah, but it's
that's
in
what it
this
is.
new technology vehicle. No, it's
Yeah,
still a dehumidifier. Last time I was in Florida, it was in my hotel room,
yeah,
sucking
and you
water
got
out
to
of the
dump it
air.
out every day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you gotta dump the thing out. It's craziness. But yeah, so this is like self-sustaining. So it's tons of solar, huge battery, presumably, and then this thing that can make water out of thin air.
water out of thin air.
I'm sure we're wrong and it's not a dehumidifier, but it sure sounds like a
Yeah.
dehumidifier from the
Anyway,
description.
so another
So,
one, Pebble. We saw them at LA a couple of years ago.
hmm Yep, sure
They were
did.
there. I don't know. Um, so they claim they're going to start delivery soon. They're claiming first half 2025. So I don't think they've actually delivered their first unit, but they say soon.
It's coming soon. They've been inviting people up to Northern California to
Hmm.
drive or tow their Pebble trailers.
Yeah. Um, I think it's cool. It seems well finished. Pricing doesn't sound, I mean, in the context of like Airstream, not crazy. Um, Weight, even considering they have a 45 kilowatt hour built-in battery pack, 5,800 pounds dry, 6,800 wet. Not bad, I don't think. You could tow that with, a mid-sized truck or a mid-sized to large SUV.
Yeah, they
Um,
were apparently towing them with Porsche Cayennes, whatever
Cayenne, yeah,
yeah, when they were inviting some people up to Northern California. So that's about, they weigh like 7,500 pounds, something like that.
yeah. So anyway,
The
so that's
interesting thing
promising.
is the Pebble and then this AC Future.
Hmm.
The trailer is about the same price. You can
Hmm.
135,000 for like a fully
Hmm.
optioned Pebble or 138,000 for the AC Future trailer. They both have 45 kilowatt hour batteries,
Hmm.
exactly the same size battery
Hmm.
in them. I'm assuming the AC Future one is powered uh, axle.
Hmm.
So they seem very similar, same price,
Yeah.
same size battery. And just interesting coincidences
Yeah, I
going
don't know.
on
I don't
there.
know if like from an engineering analysis standpoint, they kind of settled on 45 kilowatt as like the best balance between weight and capacity and you
Hmm
know,
No, you just see it in like you see it
yeah,
in the car world where all of a sudden everybody's got the same design
2 liter
car, like
turbo engine or
yeah, and then the movie world where all of a sudden you've got like three identical apocalypse movies that come out
hmm.
at the exact same summertime release. And here you've got these two trailers that are
Yeah,
exactly the same. But with this, the AC Future thing, what I did like $98,000 for a
yeah.
pod.
Hmm. Hmm.
But man, I looked at that and was like, that's a pretty affordable little ADU unit
Hmm.
if it can pass for my area. I
Hmm.
couldn't get I couldn't build something for
Hmm.
less than this. And here,
Hmm.
presumably, they just drop it off
Hmm.
in a flat bed and throw it
And
in
a
your
crane and
backyard.
just
And
kind of
yeah,
yeah.
so I looked at these and okay, the trailer, the camper, and everything, but
Hmm.
like the pod, I think might be where the action's at.
Yeah. That might be their moneymaker. And I would say, I mean, not to capitalize on tragedy, but I would say, in of course, also depending on how fast they get this to market, after the rebuilding of the Palisades, if people, plan on rebuilding and need something on site, it's like,
Yeah, and it's got resale value after the fact. And I mean,
yeah.
I've looked at in my backyard putting, because we're now zoned for ADUs, putting
Hmm.
something in there and then rent it out to, because there's a local
Hmm.
college, rent it out. It's like
Hmm.
100 grand. My monthly payment on that would be way less
Hmm.
than I could get
Hmm.
in rent.
Yeah.
Uh, and this thing, if it's fairly self-sustaining, it's got solar, I wouldn't need to worry so much
Hmm.
about power. You'd have to do something with the bathroom, but you could figure that
Yeah.
part out.
Electricity and water and sewer hookups, and there you go.
Yeah. And it looks nice and it's modern. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, this is the action.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's go through this real rapid fire
Oh
since
yeah,
this
we're
has
gonna have
been,
to. I'm on a timeline
yeah.
here, but I
Okay.
wanted to get
So,
to some
power
of the power.
stations,
Yeah.
so EcoFlow, Blue Eddy, and Jackery, which is kind of somewhat of a blast. Jackery was kind of one of the innovators in the power station game. And then they kind of became the laggards because they were slow to get on the LFP bandwagon.
They're
But now
doing a
they're back.
resurgence right now. They are
Yeah.
back. They are all over YouTube. They are running
Yeah.
tons of ads. Jackery, Jackery, Jackery everywhere I turn now.
Hmm. Yeah. And they're really pushing that they're LFP now, because I think that was really hurting them, because their competitors were saying, oh, well, our competitors are an LFP, and they're like, okay, okay, we're back in the game. So, anyway, EcoFlow Oasis. That's an AI powered, so, and of course, AI was one of the
I
big
think
buzzwords
AI
this
powered
year.
everything there this year, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, except when it didn't, because the show floor demos, it says cannot complete command, because I think all the routers were getting overwhelmed by all the requests. But anyway, so EcoFlow
Bob, who
Oasis,
sits behind the curtain,
yeah, you couldn't turn the levers fast enough.
yeah, he
Yeah.
couldn't do it fast enough.
So the cool thing about Oasis is it uses live weather monitoring to basically tell the batteries to charge or discharge. Um, so it'll say either through the grid or through the panels. It's like, hey, you need to bank up. A severe storm's coming. You're going to need this power. Um, so that was kind of cool. Also, power kit system, which is another modular setup. That seemed to be a big theme with the battery pack makers this year. Up to 45 kilowatt hours for, it says, for RVs and remote living.
I've heard
Uh,
that kilowatt hour number before. Maybe on this episode, maybe two other times.
Yeah. So anyway, don't have time to do a deep dive on that, but maybe a future episode, I'm sure. You specifically mentioned Blue Eddy Energy Pro 6K. So this says whole home energy storage integrates solar battery grid, solar generator, and EV power sources. I mean, assuming the car is capable of it, um, to provide backup power during an outage and other off-grid situations.
I saw that and I started diving into some of the articles and stuff that came out, and
Mhm.
nowhere did anybody say the capacity. You assume it's 6 kilowatt hours, but
I'm
nowhere did I
six.
find the actual number.
I'm assuming 6 kilowatt hours. It said they can be like stacked up to five.
Yeah.
So that would be 30 kilowatt hours
Yep.
doing the math. Again,
Which I
we'll have
think
to do
is,
a deep.
in
Mhm.
theory, I think it's a larger unit than the Anchor
Mhm.
3800. So it's more per unit, but I believe you can stack the 3800 up to something like 58 kilowatt hours. You can make it massive. Whereas
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
one, it's larger per
It's
unit, but it
kind of
stacks to
maxed out at a
smaller.
certain point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of,
Um,
but this one can pull something like, I don't remember the numbers, I'm going off memory, but it was something like 12 kilowatts of like instantaneous power.
which is quite a bit.
Yeah, it was like astounding what it can do at peak.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd need that much, but it it's a
Well,
very
if you
big
want to
number.
run the AC, microwave,
Yeah,
everything at once,
yeah,
right?
you're running everybody's microwave in your town at the
Yeah.
same time. It's crazy.
Wrap this up real quick. So getting back to Jackery, so they're what do they call this thing? Um, I don't even
Whole
know if I have a
home
name for
modular
this.
backup
Whole
battery.
home modular backup batteries. Um, so this one is expandable up to 132 or 123.2 kilowatt hours, which is really massive.
Sizable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically like a F-150 Lightning pack for home energy storage. And also they showed, and I guess this is a pre-existing product. It's a Explorer 3000. So I thought I was pretty cool with my Solix C1000 with the 1800 watt sustained output. This has a 3600 watt sustained output. It is 60 pounds, so a little hefty, but I mean that's pretty sizable. And those are all LFP. And finally, so
Well,
Anchor.
and they did
Uh-huh, go
a
ahead.
solar roof apparently, according to this article that we're going to
Oh
link
yeah,
to
the
on The
little
Verge.
tiles. Yeah,
Yeah, which wasn't didn't um
I think Tesla.
Tesla did that briefly, I
Yeah,
thought.
and then they kind of, do we want to do this? Do we not? But
Yeah,
I don't know.
but
I guess
that's
that's
pretty
ramping
cool.
back up.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
EcoFlow. I think did we talk about this? The solar hat.
We
So
haven't talked about it on the podcast.
EcoFlow had the little like solar hat with the, and so Anchor says, "Oh, that's cute. Guess what? We have a solar beach umbrella." So anyway, they showed that. So anyway, I think you got to run. You got
I
obligations. I
do.
got
I
obligations.
got just a handful of minutes here to get out of here. So sum up CES.
Um, you know, buzzwordy, but still a lot of talk about AI. The actual like compelling demonstrations of it were kind of foiled by bad connectivity. That aside, the big takeaway for me from the automotive standpoint, China's moving at lightning speed. Um, I think anymore, honestly, the US market is kind of secondary to them. They're like, the sense I got is the feeling is we're going to get there someday, maybe not in the next 4 years, if you get my drift, but we're coming and get ready. Companies want to do business with the Chinese automakers. I think Japan's finally getting serious about EVs, as evidenced by Honda. Um, let's see.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have time to dive into this, but there was an
Mhm.
article that was recent about CATL has now been put on a Department of Defense watch list, something like that. And one of the
Mhm.
side effects is that anybody that does business with CATL can no longer apply for U.S. defense and U.S. military
Mhm.
contracts. And Tesla does business with CATL on Chinese built Model 3s and Ys, I believe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm guessing does GM and Ford and everybody else who sells any kind of EV
Uh,
in
this is a
China. So what I'm curious
yeah.
about is, so you circle that back around. That's just like that one piece that's sitting there. And now you've got, oh, well, all these tariffs that, if you're China and you're built
Mhm.
and you're
Mhm.
coming in, uh, does it now turn into where you've got Chinese companies, they know they can't come into America, but what they're going to do is use American companies to make themselves more and more profitable. And eventually you can't stop China because they're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. They're going to build off of us because there's no
Mhm.
like, the only way that you can stop American companies is by putting them on these DOD lists for if you work with this Chinese company.
Mhm.
They're having to almost do like reverse tariffs, I guess, to like de-incentivize America, so helping Chinese companies. I'd not heard of this. I'm sure that it had all happened before, but
Mhm.
where you've got a Chinese company, an American company working with a Chinese company, the American company can now no longer bid on DoD projects. Uh, it's like it's like whack-a-mole. Well, we don't want the Chinese to come in. Well, the Chinese are just going to find another way around this. And they're not interested necessarily in coming in now or in the next 4 years, or
Mhm.
maybe even in the next 10 or 15 years. Maybe their plan is in 50 years, we're going to come in and we're going to destroy everything and we're going to build the groundwork right now. And are they going to
Mhm.
do it with
Mhm.
America helping them? Because we
Oh,
see the money and we just go.
I
It's a
have a
good
lot of
conversation.
thoughts, not enough to be able to discuss in 2 minutes, but
Based on just that past
yeah.
story and then what you've told me, that's now what I'm thinking from CES is, where does this go? I don't even
Well,
know.
just real quick. I think the potential beneficiary of this from a geopolitical standpoint may be South Korea, but we can unpack that in a future episode.
And we will, maybe. Everything that we talked about will be available in the show notes. The show notes can be found embedded into the podcast and also on thewalkcar.com where we post this episode, and also on YouTube, youtube.com/ at the walk car. You can watch this podcast there. You can subscribe to us there. You can subscribe to the regular podcast. You can go to YouTube Music and you can get both. Do whatever you want to do. And while you're doing all that, go to thewalkcar.com/store. And there you can help purchase a t-shirt or a water bottle
Or
or
a hat.
a hat or whatever else we've got up. I don't even remember at this point because I had to jigger some things around because, supply and whatever. Email us at hello@thewalker.com. We did actually, I tell people not to email us. We did actually get an email in this last week that was kind of interesting based on the battery thing, which I have not shared with you yet, Ed, but there you go.
No?
And all those Chinese companies can come in and they can advertise with us at thewalker.com/advertise. And they can tell us their story and why we shouldn't be scared. Next
All right.
week, whatever it is we talk about, but I don't have time to think about it because I got to run. I'll talk to you then.
All right. See ya.